For most of history, the biggest conflicts were about land. Then it was oil. And for a short while, we thought it was just data. But right now, in late 2025, the most intense competition on Earth is happening over something so small you could lose it under your fingernail. Semiconductors. Not the apps, not the social media platforms. I'm talking about the actual logic chips, packed with billions of transistors, etched at a scale so small it barely feels real. If you're watching this, you're using hundreds of them right now. But these chips don't just power your phone. They run the AI models that are quietly reshaping white-collar work. They guide modern weapons, and they'll likely decide who controls the future of global finance. For decades, we treated these as a background detail, a commodity like plastic or steel. That era is over. What we're living through now is a silicon standoff between the US and China. And the next 2 years, heading into 2027, could very well decide who sets the rules for the rest of the century. When people talk about the chip race, they usually focus on the design, who has the smartest engineers at NVIDIA or Apple. But that's only half the story. The real power doesn't come from designing chips. It comes from the sheer physical capability of making them. And that's where the entire world runs into a wall. A very specific wall in the Netherlands. There's a company there called ASML. They don't make chips. What they build are the machines that make advanced chips possible. These are EUV lithography systems, and calling them machines almost feels like an understatement. They're closer to scientific miracles. Each one costs upwards of $150 million and uses lasers and mirrors polished at the atomic level. And here's the reality. ASML is currently the only company on Earth that can build them. The US strategy has been simple. If China can't get the machines, China can't make the brains of the future. It's a brutal, effective choke point strategy. Or at least it was supposed to be. Because when you corner a superpower, they don't just stop. They adapt. Throughout 2024 and 2025, Chinese firms, specifically SMIC and Huawei, started doing something that caught the West off guard. They began using older, less advanced machines to produce chips that were uncomfortably good. They likely aren't as efficient, and the yield, the number of working chips per batch, is probably much lower. But they are functional. And that quietly proved a dangerous point. A blockade doesn't end progress. It just makes it slower and more expensive. So how does the US respond when containment starts to crack? By spending. A lot. The CHIPS Act wasn't just an economic policy. It was a strategic admission that relying on East Asia for the most important technology on Earth was a massive risk. By late 2025, you can actually see the results. Massive chip factories, or fabs, are rising out of the Arizona desert and the fields of Ohio. But here's the problem no one likes to say out loud. You can't rebuild a semiconductor ecosystem the way you rebuild a highway. This industry depends on things that don't scale easily. You need ultra-stable power grids, hyper-specialized chemical supply chains, and tens of thousands of engineers who can work at a level of precision that most humans can't even comprehend. You can buy the machines and you can subsidize the buildings. But you can't buy decades of manufacturing culture. It has to be built mistake by mistake. Even the optimists admit it could take 10 years before we know if this gamble actually worked. While America is betting big, China is betting patiently. They aren't just trying to win next year. They're trying to make sanctions irrelevant. In 2025, Beijing launched Big Fund 3, worth roughly $47 billion. But that number is a bit of a distraction. When you add in local government support and state banks, it's probable that China is spending more on semiconductors than it spends on its own military. Their goal is something far more ambitious than just catching up. A fully closed-loop tech ecosystem. No American software. No Dutch machines. No foreign leverage. If they get their export controls stop being a weapon and start being just noise. None of this makes sense without talking about Taiwan. This island is the heartbeat of the modern world. TSMC, the crown jewel of Taiwan, manufactures the majority of the world's most advanced chips. There's a term for this, the silicon shield. The idea is that Taiwan is so critical to the global economy that no one can afford a war over it. If TSMC goes offline, global GDP doesn't just dip, it fractures. But as we move into 2026, that shield is thinning. The US wants those factories on American soil, and China wants self-sufficiency. Both sides are quietly preparing for a world where Taiwan matters less. And that preparation itself is a form of conflict. Because this race isn't about dominance anymore. It's about becoming unextortable. So why does any of this matter? Because the winner of this race will likely decide how powerful AI becomes, and who controls it. They'll decide how fast clean energy scales and which values are baked into the code of our digital lives. We are moving away from one global tech ecosystem and toward two. A Western tech stack and an Eastern tech stack. Different standards, different rules. The chips in your pocket aren't neutral anymore. They're leverage. They're strategy. They are borders etched in silicon. This isn't a Cold War fought with tanks. It's a quieter one, fought with lasers, light, and the future of human intelligence. And whether we notice it or not, we're already living inside it. Subscribe.